So yeah, today's video will be slightly different because it will be around IRL stuff than rather any game. I thought why not do some video where I talk about the stuff I did record recently, and that was around building a new PC. To be precise, it was about building new ITX PC for everyday things that will be enough for upcoming years. Now, starting off, why did I decide on switching things? Well, the reasons were few, but I had 2 or 3 things in my mind when I was picking the parts for that current gen. Firstly, I wanted to build an AMD setup with CPU and GPU being from Team Red. Secondly, I wanted to reduce the size of my current PC since it was quite large. Sure, it looked nice, but when it comes to mobility, especially that in some time I might move between places, it wouldn't be as easy to move with it around. And thirdly, this is the more important piece, I just wanted to ease on my doggo. So you see, he's quite old now and goes whenever he wants to sleep. So then I thought, why not just do ITX build and set it up on my desk where it can stand and have all that space for doggo and whatever there will be on the floor. Now for the parts, you might have seen them already on the beginning, but here I can tell which one was which and why I chose them. Let me tell you, it's my I think 4th build, and this one wasn't as nervous as other ones, especially with the things I was doing earlier and the fact I built previously ITX build that went way faster than this one, thanks to the cooling, because I used air cooling rather than AIO, like I did it here. For the motherboard, I chose Asus ROG Strix B650E. It's one of the better ones for AM5, but you have pretty much a lot of various choices, and these are really similar. I was debating over this one or ASRock PG Mobo, but these ones were, like I said, really similar in price, and Asus one was the cheapest one. So I went with that one. Also the theme of this build was basically black interior, exterior with only white lights, and Asus having all white motherboard. I mean, you can't see anything when you either have the mesh panel or the glass panel, but still I didn't choose something like MSI board, for example, which is all silver and not black. To this one I paired it with AMD Ryzen 7 7800X3D, which is well-priced CPU that greatly focuses on gaming. It might lose in productivity, but if you are not doing much of a work on this PC, then it's basically the best choice right now. And when I was comparing it to my previous Intel CPU, I didn't notice much fallback in productivity. Maybe small fallback, but when it's doing in the background something, I didn't notice it much. So yeah, it's pretty great. One thing also I noticed is that the iGPU in some programs was set as preferred one rather than normal GPU, so that's one thing I did notice and resolved. Now the slotting kit, it wasn't that hard. I did it already on Intel socket 1700, AM4 for AMD, and now AM5. And first time you'll be really careful about those pins. As you can see, I've slotted in gently on one side first, then rested second one completely and checked if it's aligned, and then closed it. For the RAM, I went with Corsair Dominator 6000 MHz, specifically with Expo. I know some people might ask why. Some people don't care about which OC has their RAM, because on AMD CPUs it can both work XMP and Expo, but when I used XMP on my Intel CPU, on DDR4 RAM, I kept getting blue screens, which I guess shouldn't happen, but it was maybe RAM fault or I don't know. But because of that, I decided to choose Expo because I wanted to be 100% sure about using it to full extent, that, well, it will be compatible or something. And yeah, just be making sure it works. And also, it was the cheapest variant of Dominators where I bought them, because it was cheaper than XMP and it was cheaper than some color variants or basically speed variants. Although I think I still overpaid probably for those Dominators over some G-Skills. Now for the storage, I did go with two 1TB M.2 drives. These were taken from my previous PC and I wanted to put them there. One slot for the SSD is on upper cover, while the second one is behind the motherboard. For ease of use, I would recommend first slotting the drives and then mounting the RAM. Not how I did it here. Still works though, although I had to get some tweaking with it. The board is almost complete. Now all I have to do is to unpack the PSU. I used Lianli SF750. This is SFX power supply that I used already in that previous ITX build and it's really cool. Probably the favorite thing about it are the cables, where each and every one has its own sleeve. They aren't bunched up in a single sleeve, which I hated for some builds, or aren't done in a style of tape. I don't know if these tape ones, tape looking ones, would be better, but I really decided to go with basically Lianli power supplies, so yeah, I know my preferences. I did prepare the motherboard early, the cables on it, because I didn't know when or how I'm gonna mount the AIO, so I did those first just in case. First I plugged the CPU power cable, then the motherboard, the ATX cable. So I did those first just in case. With the board completely done, I could put it away and it was time for the case. From this point I'll just skip to the next steps that will be visible, because one, it was too hard to find perfect recording point, plus it would look weird with camera all over the place, and two, the battery was gone in middle of mounting the AIO, so the phone was charging and there was no recording, so it will be only highlights of what I was doing. Back to the topic, the case I chose is Cooler Master Masterbox NR200PV2. This is the new old case from Cooler Master. I chose it because of my GPU, because I also took it from my previous PC. It is AMD Radeon RX 7800 XT from ASRock, and using the FreeFun variant card, it's quite long boy on 328mm, so a lot of cases like Dan A4 or Fractal Terra wasn't an option. The best and affordable ones that would look nice would have pretty good airflow and, like I said, would be well priced, were cases from Cooler Master. V2 version is just the same as NR200 Max, with subtle changes to the front panel, USB-C, additional fan, and slightly new design. Also, you don't have AIO and PSU right away, so you can basically customize to what you want. The PSU cage supports both SFX and SFXL power supplies, so I did mount the SF750 into the cage and it waited patiently until I finished the motherboard placement. For ease of use, it's better to remove every other panel and also every bracket that can help, especially the upper one, because on this one we will mount the radiator first, later on with the AIO. So you can either remove it now or maybe later. After I screwed down the motherboard, it was time for mounting the cage, and later on it was some fan cable management. From original concept I did have to change placement of CPU power cable, because now it's basically going below all the cables, just so it wouldn't interfere with the fans. It's also a bit visible from how you look, but as long as I don't figure out if I can reroute it through the back and up to the PSU, then it has to look like this. After placing the motherboard, the power supply, it was time for the cooling. For that I've chosen Fractal Lumen S28. It's 280mm AIO, that should be enough. And one advice when picking AIO for this case, make sure to pick the one that has quite long tubes to the pump, because you will be probably sticking those tubes between the cage and front side of the case to make way for the GPU. And the mounting process was tricky, as it uses standard AM5 to mounting points, but after you get one hook and try to maneuver it a bit to get into the other, you just basically screw it and the pump is in place. All that's left is to plug the cable into the pump and to the board to get your juicy RGB. Or you don't have to do this and don't run RGB. Later on it was just matter of radiator position and plugging everything in. Don't forget to plug the pump cable into right pin. Also I would recommend daisy chaining the 140 fans and the one cooler master fan on the below. I did those, then rerouted cables from the back and plugged to the motherboard with a single pin, and that was basically it. The last thing was GPU. I mentioned it earlier, but the RX 7800 XT was from previous PC and is great graphics card overall, only beaten in price to performance by 7900 GRE in AMD's case and 4070 Super in Nvidia's. But then 7800 XT is slightly cheaper than those two when buying new, and even cheaper when buying used. I would recommend obviously buying new. But yeah, overall, in this category, in current gen, where you have that middle class, where you can play 1440 and even some 4K games, these three are basically your choices, and I was back then going with 7800 XT, and it's basically pretty great so far. I don't need much from any technologies like ray tracing. Maybe in some few years I will need FSR 3, but because I don't play any of the ray traced games, I don't use many of Nvidia's programs, I don't use any of the software Nvidia uses, then yeah, I went with cheaper option and more affordable to me with AMD's choice. And also I am using a lot of Linux, so out of the box support for me comes in handy. The drivers are already in the kernel, not like in Nvidia's case where there's some trouble on their side. Well, not on their Nvidia's side, but rather the ones that manage the packages for Nvidia drivers. So yeah, for Linux you basically want AMD stuff. After slotting the GPU into the slots, plugging the cables and screwing everything down, I connected the riser to the GPU and motherboard, and all that was left was to cable manage a bit so that the cables wouldn't interfere with the fans, and close finally the panels, and that was all the build. It's really quiet, even more quiet than my previous PC. I wonder what would happen if I would put 140 Noctua fans here and 120 on the pocket pump, and everything daisy chained. I would plug it in and see how much quiet I could get this PC to be. But either way, it's really quiet, only revving up when I'm doing something like rendering software, not rendering software but rendering the video. The amount of ventilation is awesome. You have ventilation from the side, from the bottom, from the back, from the top, and you can even have from the other side if you are using the mesh panel, not the glass panel. Currently I use glass panel, and it's, from my point, or like I'm checking right now, it's not heating up as much as I would think. So yeah, I would probably play with it, probably switching panels or something in the future, but for now I guess I will leave it here. So yeah, that's my small PC for my small needs. I was really satisfied with the end result and will probably tinker a bit more when I'll have time and will to do cable management or change fans. But for now I'll leave it. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.